There we go. All right. Cool. So I'll kick this off with an intro. You can all see the agenda. Hi, I'm Brandon Askov. I'm the Director of Web Projects at Rocket Insights, part of DEPT. So today we're going to well, first I should talk about who Rocket is. So Rocket's based out of the US. We work closely with a bunch of crypto companies in the greater Boston area. I should also talk about why I'm here. So I've been in that space for a while, but I will say that back in April of 2013, I definitely traded half of a Bitcoin for a pizza. So myself, like many others, have this whole fear of missing out, especially this time around, where we're seeing all this popularity in the NFT space. Suddenly very popular in mainstream media, from Jack Dorsey signing and selling his first tweet to Beeple becoming the third most living valuable artist ever. That said, there is a confusing sea of lingo and barrier to entry. And so it's still very hard for your average consumer to get involved in this. So today, what we're going to do is I'm going to pass it to Isabel shortly. She's going to walk you through some slides to really kind of explain this space and where you can tap into it. And then we'll move into a panel discussion for a little while where we have some people from all relevant areas in this space, from digital creation to actual delivering this stuff on a variety of blockchains. And then we'll move into a Q&A so we can answer some questions with the time we have left. But I do think that the slides are super helpful, so I won't waste any more time, and I'll pass straight to Isabel.
Hello, everyone. Hopefully you can all see my screen. Great, thank you, Brendan. I am Isabel Perry, and I'm the Director of Technology at Byte. Byte recently became part in DEPT back in February. And I think probably a lot of you are here today because you've been seeing headlines like this over the last sort of 6 months. There's been an absolute explosion of a sort of conversation around virtual fashion and NFTs. And a lot of you are probably wondering sort of what is all of this space about and how can brands participate in this new area of technology. We certainly had our attention caught by the headlines, partly because at Byte we create a lot of AR for brands. And I think it really got us wondering if we could create an AR NFT as a sort of proof of concept for our clients about the way that we could bring together sort of virtual experiences with a sort of more interesting area of sort of ownership around what those virtual experiences actually meant. But to understand what the opportunity was for our clients, we needed to spend a bit of time sort of really getting to grips with what an NFT was, because this area really has exploded in the last few months. So I'm going to share a sort of very short summary of what an NFT is before talking about the context around why this thing, I think, is sort of exploding at the moment, and then going on to what we created for DEPT as our first NFT edition. So an NFT actually stands for non-fungible token, and non-fungible tokens are unique digital items with blockchain managed ownership. What's really key about that word is fungible. It's quite a sort of confusing word, but actually it's a really, really simple concept, which basically says a fungible item is interchangeable. If I have $1 and you have $1 and we swap dollars, we both still have $1. So a Bitcoin is an example of a fungible digital item because one Bitcoin is the same as any other Bitcoin. A non-fungible item is unique. And so just like the Mona Lisa, an NFT has been created to be one of the kind. And that means that I can't, whilst I might choose to swap an NFT with you because we want to own different NFTs, they have different values and they are intrinsically sort of different objects. And the way that that actually works in the blockchain, and I'm not here to talk about blockchains or cryptocurrencies, but it is really helpful to understand at sort of the simplest level why NFTs are sort of exist on blockchains and how they exist on blockchains. And when we say that ownership is managed, what does that mean? So at the simplest level, a blockchain is a method of storing data, and data is stored in these blocks, which are linked to the previous block. So or the cryptocurrency, really what you're getting is a list of transactions which might be happening on that with that cryptocurrency, and that's literally pushed to a block and stored indefinitely. And over time, you can understand the way those transactions sort of are continuously stored. And NFTs exist on blockchains in a really similar way, because basically you can mint or add to a blockchain, and that basically puts that unique item within a block, and it's there forever, and people can check that it's there. And you can also trade it. So if I mint an NFT, I can then go on to sell it. You can also check that it's there, like I said, and then what's really interesting is that sort of other people, if they own that NFT, can then continue to resell it. And at the simplest level, that is the way that NFTs exist on blockchains. So that's that's how it works. But really what's so amazing about NFTs is just the sheer sort of unlimited breadth of what an NFT can actually be within that context. So NFTs include collectibles, which might be something that you want to either collect a number of or sort of trade to build out your hand, a bit like Pokemon cards. They can include game items. So within virtual worlds, you might have an NFT of a specific sword, for example. Very famously, there are lots of digital art, and that's a sort of real driver of a lot of the conversation happening at the moment around NFTs. But they can also, as Brandon said, include things like tweets or even ownership records for physical assets. And this is just a little bit of a timeline that you can see. Actually, NFTs were being sort of first issued back in 2017 with CryptoPunks, which were sort of very simple images, which would continue to be traded today. And then you can see that there was basically this flurry of activity over the last sort of, well, in 2021 around things like albums being released as NFTs or incredibly rapidly increasing sale prices. And these NFTs, so you might hear that these NFTs are being bought and sold, but sort of where are they? Where is this happening? And there are over 130 different marketplaces where you can mint, trade, and track these NFTs. And because they're all sort of built on top of blockchains, they're incredibly transparent to look into and understand how much money is actually sort of being traded on these different platforms. One example of them is a foundation app, which is one of the largest ones. It's built on top of Ethereum, which is a blockchain. And you can see here, there's sort of digital art uploaded and people can bid on that. And then there's sort of, they can also resell those assets. But for brands, the most interesting example, sort of the most successful and huge example to date is the NBA Top Shot, which invites you to witness history and own the NFT moments in a new era of fandom. And it sort of started with this video here of James LeBron reenacting a Kobe Bryant slam dunk. And that was turned into a moment. And moment's really a concept that NBA Top Shot created, where they sort of essentially packaged up that footage and then sold it as an NFT on NBA Top Shot for incredibly high prices. And then that asset is then traded as a sort of collectible again and again by multiple different people. And the amazing thing for the NBA is that every time it's resold, they can take I'm not sure if it's 5% or 2%, but they take a sort of royalty on that resale. And it's been so successful that if you look at the top 20 NFT marketplaces, NBA Top Shot, which is the sort of, in some ways, the most branded version of NFTs, has driven almost 43% of all gross value of NFT sales in all time. So there's huge amounts of money at play here as well, because it's 1.6 billion pounds has been spent on the top 20 NFT marketplaces. And within the art space alone, 45% of that has just been in the last 4 weeks. Some of these other marketplaces are sort of around virtual worlds, lots of them are around art, some of them are around sport, and there's a real sort of breadth, and lots of them are around gaming. And there's a real breadth in what sort of these verticals are emerging around NFT marketplaces. But I think a lot, again, I think it was unbelievable to see just in March, so last month, when suddenly across all headlines, people were talking about the fact that Beeple had just sold an NFT for $69.3 million US. And that is quite astonishing. And it does beg the question, it's just a JPEG, so are we in a bubble? And Beeple himself did say that he thought that we were in a bubble shortly before his art then went on to sell for $69 million US. But I think that there's a much bigger and more sort of important context that means that even though the art world might be in a bit of a bubble right now, there's something really, really interesting about the sort of a need for NFTs as we spend more and more of our time online. And I'll sort of go on to explain that slightly, but I don't really need to tell anyone on this call that our lives are increasingly being spent online. just in the last sort of 3 years, and this is actually from 2018 now, an increase of 5% of people thought that they spent almost all of their time online. And you can see here that the younger you are, the more time you spend online. And this data from Q4 2020 shows that around 15% of sort of Gen Z are spending more than 10 hours online a day. So that's really, really key, and that's not going to change. And as we do spend more and more time online, buying virtual goods has become more mainstream. Lots of you will remember the $1 million homepage, which was a genius idea with sort of 1,000 pixel by 1,000 pixel website, and you could pay to own multiple pixels. My brother, who's younger than me, had a friend who at 16 had become a multi-millionaire from selling 2p textures on Minecraft, now lives in Bali with his own helicopter. And then I'm joined here on the panel later is the Fabricant, but sort of you can see the transition into suddenly in like 2019, we are buying these digital goods as NFTs. And this was the most beautiful version of a sort of very, very early experimentation with a digital fashion. And that's what we're seeing today become more and more sort of prevalent. And I think a lot of the reason why that's happening is because the gap between in real life and online has narrowed, and we're beginning sort of to live these augmented reality lives. So back in 2014, when ASOS was talking about Halloween, they were sort of taking photographs of real people wearing real clothes. And cut to 6 years later, ASOS is talking about Halloween in this sort of augmented reality life way, where actually it's through the use of augmented reality effects on TikTok, and they're creating these experiences for the customers, not just the sort of creators, to really own part of that brand and build out that sort of content almost with ASOS. But COVID has forced us all to behave more like Gen Z. I think we all know that we've been spending more and more time, given we haven't been able to do absolutely anything else. We've been spending more time online for the last 12 months. And as we live more and more our lives online, digital goods are going to become even more valuable. And so you see the likes of these sort of $200 Photoshop outfits. Gucci sort of announced that they were creating $12 Gucci sneakers a couple of weeks ago. And Artifact sells NFT trainers for often sort of $10,000 a pop. And this is kind of extraordinary because I think it's almost sort of, if you're not really in the space, it's almost crept up, and suddenly you realize that there are all of these sort of amazing digital, basically money being spent on these beautiful digital goods, which you will never see in the physical world, but it doesn't matter because they're made to be consumed online. And I think that's really highlights the tension, because the internet has made sharing information frictionless. And this is a sort of really at odds with a deeply human instinct to own and to trade. So this is just sort of 3 minutes of screenshotting my computer, and sort of everywhere you look on online, you see copy, download, forward, share, and everything is about sort of distribution of information. And that is brilliant and wonderful, and one of the reasons why the internet's such an incredibly special place. But there's this human need, or sort of like unstoppable need, to own things. So back in 9000 BC, we were owning cattle. In 12,000 BC, people were sort of trading with shells. And I think it's a real interesting sort of reflection of whatever people value, they begin to create ownership around. And I think because we value being online so much, it's really important that we understand ways of building out ownership. And I think that's also reflected by the fact that sort of there's a really disproportionate value driven by collectible NFTs versus unique NFTs, because it's that thing of like, I want to collect shells, or I want to collect sort of land, or I want to own patents. So even though only 50% of the top 20 NFT marketplaces offer collectibles, they drive nearly 80% of the gross value of NFTs. So I think NFTs are a really inevitable form of digital ownership. And although there's definitely hype and there's definitely bubbles right now, it is really interesting to think about, where do you start if you accept that people are going to want to own these digital spaces or digital items? And for that, you kind of have to take a step back and address the unsustainable elephant in the room. And there is a lot of talk about this. And I think actually so we released an NFT last week. And it was really, really brilliant actually to see that there was pushback even within DEPT and within Byte on, should we be doing this? Is this environmentally friendly enough? How do you address this? So it is a concern. It's a really real concern. And if you are building an NFT or creating an NFT on Ethereum, for example, which is the most commonly used blockchain for NFTs, it is like flying for 2 hours. And that is a problem, I think. And just sort of to help you understand, energy is used to mint, to bid, to cancel bids, for sales. Every sort of transaction that you're making on that blockchain does require sort of energy to enact. But technology has progressed since sort of blockchain technology was introduced almost 10 years ago, or well, yeah. And there is a sort of new way of building blockchains, which instead of using proof of stake, you can use proof of work to verify that transactions are accurate and to ensure the sort of stability and validity of any given blockchain. And you can see here the difference between sort of the estimated annual energy consumption of Bitcoin compared to Ethereum, which was a sort of blockchain version 2, and Tezos, which is a sort of blockchain version 3, which uses proof of work. And it's estimated that actually, even compared to Ethereum, Tezos is sort of 1.5 million times less environmentally damaging. And to the point that it's really like running any other website. So there are absolutely sort of ways around creating less environmentally damaging NFTs. And with that in mind, we sort of went through these 5 steps of actually, this is how you can create your first NFT. So the first thing is to create your NFT asset, and that's really, what do you want to turn into an NFT? The second is to select a marketplace, and some steps might be required to prove eligibility of that space. The third thing is to set up your crypto wallet. So that's to sort of create your public address on the blockchain, and also to create the private keys to actually control that. The fourth is to mint the NFT. So that's when you actually sort of upload your NFT asset into the blockchain. And then you can list the NFT and allow people to sort of bid on it or buy it for a fixed price, or to resell it. And I think we only joined DEPT back in February, and it was kind of amazing to see that DEPT already had a apparel line of this sort of like streetwear. And we thought, what if actually the next DEPT apparel drop, which happened really regularly, was virtual, and that becomes the NFT. So you can see here the DEPT apparel website. We designed and built this virtual jacket as a Snapchat lens using the new sort of full body tracking, which was only recently released. And that sort of opens up really beautiful clothing into Snapchat. And we push that to Snapchat to actually sort of make the jacket. Beautifully modeled by some Byte colleagues here. Then we needed to choose the NFT Marketplace. And for that, the number one requirement that we had was that it was a proof of stake blockchain. We also wanted something that was semi-curated so that it had a sort of higher quality of goods on it, something that supported checkout, so the NFTs could be bought via the marketplace, because we didn't have time to build our own backend for that, and unlockable files, so that once someone's bought the NFT, they can then access the design files of that AR lens. So we chose to work with NFT Showroom because it's built on the blockchain and cryptocurrency Hive. And then we need to set up the crypto wallet. So for this, you sort of create your account. You register within the name of what you want to be. So for us, we actually had to pretend to be a collective of artists to qualify to be on NFT Showroom. So we registered as Department of Artists. And then we generated the necessary keys for accessing our wallet. when you hear about people that have been trying to uncover hard drives, which sort of would give them access to Bitcoin that's somewhere in a dump somewhere, what they're actually referring to is the private keys, which are generated when you sort of register for your crypto wallet. And that's what this process will sort of generate for you. Minting the NFTs is in some ways one of the simplest steps when you're working with a marketplace like NFT Showroom. We decided to create one NFT of the video render of the jacket and create 20 editions because there are 1,700 depsters. So we thought any less than 20 was not realistic. We set the price at around $10, which was 12 Hive at the time. And people could unlock a link to the Google Drive once they had purchased the NFT jacket. And you can see here, you literally upload an image, you can upload videos, and you set a number of settings around sort of, price and so on. And then you list it. And I think it is slightly complex sort of creating a crypto wallet and buying these NFTs. And I think we had no idea how many people would buy these NFTs when we first went live. And they sort of essentially sold out within a couple of hours. Someone immediately relisted one at over £1 million, over $1 million. Others were listed at 750,000. And there's just been a sort of incredible sort of resale activity or flurry over the last 5 days or so. And I think it was a bit of a window into the NFT world at the moment because someone called Arbitrager has bought about 16 of them and keeps sort of basically gaming the price. And so it's been incredibly interesting seeing how it's sort of played out in terms of the actual sort of sell and resale of the NFTs. And on NFT Showroom, if you do want to buy an NFT, the UX is still actually quite sort of challenging. So within NFT Showroom, you have to click buy 5 times to actually confirm that you really, really, really want to buy the NFT. And I guess just it was quite a complex process initially getting to grips with how to both generate and buy NFTs. And it's just, yeah, it hasn't necessarily been easy. So I think and sort of the question is why bother, but I think that the sort of bigger question is how can we make it easier? And I think both Brandon and Rachel from Circle are sort of working at companies that are sort of spending a lot of time and thought into thinking about how to create much, much richer experiences and that do make that path to purchase a lot less frictionful. So I think to answer why bother, you really need to think about why people are buying NFTs at the moment. So the first thing is there's a real sort of explosion of people that are speculating on NFTs. And I think we need to be realistic about that. And I think some people will probably lose a lot of money actually on it. But there is sort of a lot of speculation going on. But there's also a lot around sort of pride and ego and sort of it's that deeply human instinct to own and to want to own something and to have that be visible. There's also a huge growth in sort of sales of NFT just around fandom, because it's about a way of almost like expressing your identity through what you admire. And I think that's a really, really interesting space for sort of creators and influencers, as well as for brands. But then also patronage. So because all of the transaction history is visible, actually, if you become a patron of an artist that you really admire, then your early patronage will be indelible sort of within the blockchain. So how can brands make NFTs work for them? Well, I think you need to sort of tap into the drivers behind customers and think about allowing resale to create large markets, creating buzz around ownership, integrating with your existing goods and services, and leveraging sort of a really dedicated fan base. So if you have existing customers that are really dedicated, then like lean into that. So I think just to sort of some thought starters of just how brands can then leverage NFTs by category. So for fashion, can you provide exclusive virtual versions of owned outfits that also prove the authenticity of that outfit? Could you actually create a leaderboard of the sort of the top couture spenders if there is a sort of competitive element of that? And I won't read through all of these because I appreciate this sort of at time, but just within property, can you offer a digital monopoly experience to trade virtual versions of homes? Within law, can you fast track paperwork for property sales, patents, vehicle registration, or even diamonds? And within marketing strategy, actually, what does sponsorship look like when you actually give away NFTs or behind the scenes content to customers and it's all tradable? Or can you do sort of out of home, create location specific coupons for collection and redemption as NFTs? And this is really just sort of very, very first thoughts. I think there's just a huge amount of creative potential in this space. And so just to sum up, I think, yes, like a lot of the NFTs are just JPEGs. And yes, we probably are in a hype cycle, but we are only human. And as we increasingly value digital items, we really need a way to own them. Thank you very much.
All right. That was awesome, Isabel. Thank you so much. I know when I went through that for the first time, it was like very helpful and probably the simplest blockchain analogy I've ever seen. And I mean that. Cool. So yeah, now we are at the panel discussion side of the talk. So I'll let everyone introduce themselves and I'll pass it in the order here. But basically, we've got Isabel from Byte, who we just saw. We've got Will Skugel from Snapchat. We've got Carrie Murphy from the Fabricant. We have Demera English from, well, she's a virtual fashion creator and artist, which I think brings a whole cool concept to this whole talk. And Rachel Meyer, who is from Circle. So I'll pass, well, Isabel, we know who you are. So I'll pass to Will first to introduce himself and we'll go through intros and then I'll kick off with a couple questions.
Hey everybody, thanks very much for that, Isabel, and hey Brandon, thanks for inviting us along to the panel discussion. I'm Will Skugel, I'm Global Director of Creative Strategy at Snapchat, where I've been for 5.5 years, and I've been working on AR since that moment, really since the vomiting rainbow kind of transcended the platform to become the most popular Halloween costume of 2015 in North America, all the way through to what we're seeing today with augmented reality really becoming a full funnel format across attention, emotion, and utility, and fashion being very much at the driver of the forefront of that shift and change. Thanks very much.
All right, let's go Carrie next.
Hey everyone, I'm Carrie. I'm one of the founders of the Fabricant. We are the world's first digital-only fashion house where we focus on creating the digital-only fashion industry. It's highly creative, it's super technically challenging, but the biggest challenge for digital-only fashion industry is to find that monetization, new revenue streams, so everybody can become a digital fashion designer. So fashion brands can start their own digital-only fashion labels. On the side, we are also an agency. We help fashion brands digitize. We create digital samples. We create content for their lookbooks, and we do marketing campaigns and interactive experiences. But I'm super excited about the digital-only fashion industry. So yeah, I'll leave it to that. I'm sure we go deeper into it.
Well, since we're on the digital fashion trend, I'll pass it to Demera.
Hello, everyone. My name is Demera English, and I am a self-proclaimed fashion tech cyborg and designer of extended reality experiences and virtual fashion. Basically, I use technology as a lenses to criticize analog fashion in ways to make it more diverse of different cultural identities, more inclusive of our digital citizenship, and also overall more democratic and sustainable.
All right. And of course, last but not least, Rachel.
Hello, everyone. Nice to meet you all. My name is Rachel Mayer. I'm VP of Growth and Product Marketing at Circle, based in Miami. Have been at Circle for nearly 4 years. If you don't know who Circle is a payments and infrastructure company for internet companies. We marry both traditional means of payments and treasury with blockchain-based worlds. You also might know us as the creator of the world's leading stablecoin, US dollar coin, USDC. And we power today a lot of companies and NFT marketplaces like Dapper Labs for their NBA Top Shot. So excited to talk to you about some of the challenges and experiences, and how Circle and other companies in this space are tackling some of those for you to build new products and services.
That's great. All right. I've got a few questions queued up that are sort of targeted at direct people, but I figured we'll start with one person who answers them, and then we'll just go from there. If someone wants to jump in and add in to the answer, feel free. So let's see how this goes. We'll start with Will. This first one is it's kind of about the NBA Top Shot stuff. So what can brands like the NBA, you know, that's one of the biggest ones, what can they do to involve this community of creators that are out there, considering they have these proprietary marketplaces?
So I guess in terms of the NBA example, which is a fascinating one, I had no idea of just how much of the NFT economy it was really powering and driving at this time. It's absolutely phenomenal to see that level of growth. From a creative perspective, talking from the Snapchat perspective and point of view, what we're seeing is a real democratization, certainly of augmented reality, in terms of the technology that people can use to craft these types of experiences. Certainly since we released the Lens Studio software for free a couple of years ago, which is the software we use to build all of our augmented reality experiences, we've seen over 1 million lenses built within that software and over 1 trillion views of those lens experiences. So we're starting to see a community build up and emerge and really drive influence. And I love this point actually, around the idea of craft. I think that the influence that we're seeing through digital creativity and with augmented reality is one where it's influenced through beautiful craft, as opposed to just personality. And I'm not saying one's better than the other. I just think that it's really interesting we're seeing that emergence. And I think that is really celebrated in what we're seeing in kind of NFTs and the growth that we're seeing across, you know, whether they're JPEGs or GIFs or whatever they might be. It's really beautifully crafted digital assets that people are celebrating and buying into and wanting to have a sense of ownership of, as the physical and digital worlds are kind of becoming closer and closer together and becoming kind of part of each other. So I do think it's a really fascinating trend. So I do think that for brands, the opportunity is to think about the craft that you can really bring to the table. And for me, that's about contribution. I think so much of digital has previously been about interruption, whereas I think we're in this beautiful phase now where we're thinking about how can we make the digital world better, more interesting, more entertaining, more useful, more beautifully crafted. And as the tools become more democratized and the accessibility becomes more democratized, the volume of content and the quality of content is going to become more democratized as well. And I think that really flips the narrative and the question back to brands about how can you contribute with something beautiful.
I would like to ask a question on that straight away. Are you going to tie your lens filters into NFTs? I think that's probably the biggest question that we get from all the brands, and every single brand is trying to monetize on this.
Well, so I think that with AR and with AR that's built within the Lens Studio, when a brand builds within the studio, that's something that they're building for themselves. What they do with the assets that they create is really up to the brand itself. There's not anything that is currently immediately on the radar in that respect. But I would say that brands really, it's up to brands to realize the opportunity and work to, you know, make the most of the asset that they're creating within the studio itself.
Gucci just dropped some sneakers for $12, which you get to release as NFTs as a AR shoe wearing experience.
Yeah, I think so. I think one of the things that actually we're seeing with the AR Studio and with Snapchat in particular is 75% of our 265 million DAUs are using augmented reality every day. So there's hundreds of millions of people using AR on the platform. That makes that gives you an immediately scalable audience. So when someone like, you know, if we look at the question of, is this a fad or is it something that's becoming mainstream? You know, I think art follows fashion, or brands follow people, if you know what I mean. And what we've seen in AR, and certainly with product trial and fashion trial, is Dior, Gucci, Lacoste, Balenciaga, Nike, Adidas, all building digital fashion assets, augmented reality fashion assets, in order to raise awareness and provide accessibility to those assets to people at huge scale. So I think in Gucci, what they're doing, and actually also with DEPT, what you did with your first NFT puffer was provide interest and awareness and scale through Snapchat and AR trial through body tracking, but then obviously release the NFT through a different platform.
All right. Well, this is a good segue then, because well, this one's actually going to be targeted at Rachel. So comes as no surprise that there's a whole bunch of interest from brands and a flurry of interest about having their own NFT-based storefronts. Since many of those brands are just getting started right now, and this Isabel's talk was a great intro to a lot of that. What's one or two key considerations that you think they should keep in mind when they're sitting in meetings planning these things?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Isabel's presentation did a great job of explaining the pain points of a brand going through creating a digital NFT good, but also how to put that good out into the world and have your existing audience interact with that and perhaps purchase with it. So marrying those two worlds of how you monetize today and how you interact with the technology today is something that you should consider, and how to have sort of that seamless user experience that your consumers today expect when they're shopping on something like Amazon. What she just went through, that's not currently the experience with blockchain technology. It's entirely new, right? Even the nomenclature, the usage, wallets and fees and gas and acquiring cryptocurrency for your consumers, that is entirely new and scary sometimes. So you need to choose very well how to interact with this technology and partner with a company and an infrastructure provider that abstracts some of those challenges to your audience, but also brings in the crypto ecosystem and crypto natives who, this is their bread and butter and eat, live, and breathe Ethereum and Bitcoin on a daily basis. So let's talk about Circle and how we can help you and brands and companies, craft that experience. One of the reasons why NBA Top Shop and Dapper Labs has been so successful, in addition to sports being cool, is that they created that user experience that really mirrors web today on how to shop through the internet. So they let you put in your debit and your credit card very seamlessly, just with the shopping cart experience as you would expect. But they also let you pay with traditional cryptocurrencies like USDC or Ethereum or Bitcoin. So they're catering to both audiences, both mainstream and crypto, and creating a user experience where it abstracts the blockchain-ness behind the scenes, but gives that digital ownership. And so when you're choosing a provider, you really need to think about the provider where do they sit in that spectrum? Can they cater towards wide different users and give you the ability to create the user experience that you want for your brand and not interfere with the user experience that your brand wants to create? So that's what Circle does, and excited to work with all of you all on how you're thinking about building new Web 3.0 experiences using blockchain technology.
And just on that point, Rachel, I thought one of the things which I found so interesting about the NBA Top Shot site is that you have to dig really hard to find any mention of NFT, let alone any mention of sort of all of the language around blockchains. And I feel like it's not just been a UX job, it's also been a sort of linguistic marketing, incredible linguistic job. And I guess it's just interesting to know, how do you position it with your audience that they understand what the ownership means without getting too scientific is going to be a challenge that we're all going to have to tackle.
Exactly. Like in their checkout flows, there's no mention of providers, no mention of how the funds settle behind the scenes or how they're burying blockchain worlds. And it's just in the fine print where it's like, hey, this NFT, go to the Block Explorer and see how you own it. And right now, it's a closed loop marketplace, but pretty soon, like other marketplaces that you show, you'll be able to trade and send each other these NFTs publicly, transparently on the blockchain. So that's another consideration for a brand is, do you want to start out in a closed loop fashion and sort of limit that ownership to just your ecosystem, or do you want to start with the entire world? And there's different trade-offs and benefits to both of those. But the success of Dapper is sort of, introducing to their consumers little by little with bite-sized pieces of information to get their feet wet with NFTs.
All right, that's a great answer. I'm going to take a little shift on this one and talk about more of the artist community. So, Demera, I'm going to you for this one to start with, although Carrie, I expect you'll probably jump in here too. So if Instagram and YouTube are any indication, there's like a pretty large community of 3D artists out there. I've seen some really weird stuff, but I've seen some pretty great stuff too. That they could be tapping into this and probably already are. But if you think about right now, we already have kind of basic formats like JPEGs and videos. If you think about where the technology is headed, what's some advice you would give to those creators so that they can stay relevant and profitable as the market gets flooded with more and more creators?
I think that my first advice would definitely be to cultivate your own artistic perspective and your own identity before just trying to follow the mainstream. Because what happens in both the fashion industry and the digital art industry is that when there is a sort of meta narrative or meta aesthetic, then everyone, including the consumers and the clients, think that everything should look exactly like that. And then that aesthetic is consumed, is thrown away, and you are thrown away with it as well. So my advice would definitely be to explore your own digital identity within this space. That's the best way of remaining relevant. Also understanding what is unique to you, to your experience, and to your voice in ways that instead of just remaining relevant in this field, you're also a valuable contributor, and you also become a mirror to the industry so that more and more people can feel that they are represented to your own particular perspective and voice. And also it's very important to keep track of all the new templates and technologies that are coming up that you can definitely take an advantage of, so that you can also sort of ride the wave of hype that these templates come with. For example, Lens Studio just released the 3D body tracking technology that is like a revolution. As someone that has been experimenting with augmented reality for a few years, this is really the first tool that I can see that will truly elevate my work and make it look more realistic, make it look more in the moment. And I was lucky enough to be collaborating with Spectacles and Snapchat and have early access to the 3D body tracking feature. But as this feature is being more and more talked about, obviously that the Lens Studio and the Snapchat community are looking for this particular type of filter. So if you make it first, you'll also be one of the first people to define the aesthetic of a new template or of a new product. And it's definitely very exciting. I was trying on the DEPT bomber jacket on Snapchat, earlier today. And you move your arms and it moves with you. It's just completely unthinkable. A year ago, I would never think that this would be happening today, or that there would even be a need for it today. So I think that the best way to remain relevant is definitely to remain authentic to yourself and to your identity, and to keep track on all of these amazing, amazing creative opportunities and features that are coming out.
Yeah, I would like to add to that. Completely echo Demar. Community is also very important to really get people following you, and that really an authentic connection to the blockchain industry is necessary, because there's a lot of people chomping on there just trying to make a quick buck right now because it's a hype. So for any 3D artist who's coming there, should come with concept, should come with the attitude that they're there to stay and not just to like throw something onto a marketplace and, you know, trying to monetize on it. Because that's what the buyers want. That's what the users want. When you ask the whales, the people who are doing the big investments in the blockchain space, you know, why would they invest in art piece? You know, that they really just need to have an authentic connection to the artist and know that they are there for their artistic and creative reasons, for their storytelling reasons, for something that has to do with their digital identity, as Demera says, something that really connects to the space. And what I love about it, that it creates a space for a whole new generation of artists, like this artist called Ferocious, who did the drop with Artifact Guys, digital sneakers, 3.1 million. He's done multiple different drops on his own as well, and he's making a lot of money. This kid is 18 years old, and he really came into the community with this storytelling aspect of, hey, I'm an 18-year-old artist. My parents hated my art several years ago, and here I am with my community, and they're investing hundreds of thousands. They're investing millions in my art. People see him as the new Keith Haring of the digital art generation. That story really resonates with that community and with that space. It really provides kind of like this idea of the new world. We don't have to be tied to the Sotheby's and the Christie's and the traditional art world. All of a sudden, we have this whole new medium of a whole new generation of people coming in there from a very, you know, genuine perspective. And if anything, you know, from the blockchain community, they, not that they despise, they're not all about status quo. They're not all about, you know, big organizations. They're all about decentralization, so, you know, independent people, and you know, just trying to do things differently than they exist, let's say, in, you know, the old world versus the new world. So for me, it's the exciting space. And, you know, like we've been in it for over 2 years right now, and there's been a lot of people jumping into the space over and over again. And the question always is, do they stand the test of time? Are they here just kind of like dropping in? Or are they here to stay? Because these cycles, they come and go. We're in this hype cycle right now. It will die out at some point. Who are going to be the people that are going to stay in the blockchain community when the money's not flowing anywhere? And who are the people that are going to be stepping out again? Because, you know, it's not a trend, it's not a hype. But yeah, it's definitely gotten so much better. And I recently read a letter by somebody who's knee deep in the blockchain space, and he talked about the cycles from 2011, 2013, 2017, and now 2021. And he really says that vision is going to be the main differentiator between all the players in this hype.
I'm gonna agree with that as well. I think that you'll find that people will rise to the top of that pile. I'm personally wondering if they're gonna end up getting hired by these luxury brands or be their own luxury brands, like create the Supreme that is the digital version or something like that. Well, time will tell.
I think the latter. Absolutely.
Yeah, I hope so. Right.
Definitely.
Oh, go ahead.
Yes, I just wanted to add up that I definitely think that they will become their own future and present couture digital fashion brands, like the Fabricant, for example. There's no comparison between the experience of the Fabricant and the experience of a physical luxury brand. These are two completely different niches. And
Thank you, Demera.
Challenge right now is to respect both of them. And if luxury analog fashion brands really want to be part of this niche and really want to be relevant and create an impact on this niche, the best thing that they can do is to collaborate with artists and designers that already have a voice in this space, that are already followed. Because like in any niche, authenticity is very important. And if there is no authenticity, people just run away from a concept. So I think that right now is really about building up the energy so that it's not just a fad, as many people are saying. I really do believe in the power of NFT and digital artists for it to be a new era of interaction and consumption of art overall.
I don't think you could have made a better segue to this next question, which also ties into a few Q&A questions, which is about authenticity. Rachel, you probably can weigh in here too. Like, any artist can sell their goods directly to consumers on blockchains, multiple, right? But verifying that authenticity could be hard because what's to stop someone from making multiple copies? What's to stop someone from selling it in multiple marketplaces or multiple times? So even though it's not in the spirit of blockchain, it seems like we still defer to brands or clearinghouses or whatever to be the trusted authority in the matter, the Sotheby's and the Christie's of the digital world. What is the future of verifying ownership when those records exist on multiple blockchains and multiple wallets? Do we look to some one solution to rule them all? Are we going to see like, Octo buy up auth 0, but in the blockchain space, so we all go to them for user ownership? I mean, I don't know how we end up dealing with this. And how do we prevent forgeries?
Yeah,
Rachel,
I
you
can
wanna go first?
chime in. Yeah. I mean, there's different blockchains that you can issue NFTs on. And so the proof of ownership can exist amongst those different blockchains, obviously. The question is, how do we enable the creative economy and sort of marry that proof of ownership in the real world, and how your brand and identity interacts with the real world today with those blockchains today? At the end of the day, proof of ownership relies on who actually carries the private keys across any blockchain, right? So you as a brand and as a creator, you need to choose if you want that ownership yourself. And it's pretty scary to be your own bank and custody, 24-word long seed phrases and whatnot. Or do you want to delegate that to a custody provider, maybe someone like Circle who can custody NFTs, and especially as the NFTs rise in value, like, do you really want to be the owner of an NFT that's worth millions of dollars? So that's one aspect, is the real ownership lies in who custody the NFTs, but then how do you represent that ownership to your audience? I think it's going to be a combination of your existing social and community channels to marry those two worlds. So your audience will be able to see sort of your, public wallet address where you've minted the NFT. And when you tweet it out, or when you post it on, social and Instagram and Snapchat, you as the existing sort of brand and creator ownership, voicing that you've minted this NFT, married with that proof of ownership with your keys through the public wallet address, is going to be sort of the nuance of how digital ownership represents going forward. And then you can choose where to distribute that across any one of the horizontal or vertical marketplaces that Isabel went through going forward.
Makes sense. Now, Will, do you see that kind of stuff happening at Snapchat where, let's use the Gucci sneakers example. What if I had the skills to make my own Gucci sneakers and I made them and I'm like, yeah, now they're my filter, and there you go. And Gucci like sends you a takedown notice or whatever. Have you had to deal with any of that stuff yet?
So in that respect, that would be between you and Gucci, and with a platform that you have used to a certain degree. I think I talk about authenticity just from another aspect, and it is from the brand point of view. And I think that's in terms of, I think just to take a step back from the NFT space and just look at it from a marketing perspective. One of the things that I think brands look for, or have always looked for, is authenticity in marketing. And with NFTs, with augmented reality, what you have is an experience where people are welcoming the brand into their world. Certainly when you look at, say, Gucci sneakers or Adidas sneakers, or any kind of product trial AR experience that may lead on to a purchase of the actual product or of an NFT, what you're finding is that people are spending the time to choose to pay attention to that experience, right? And attention is supposedly a diminishing commodity within marketing. It's really not. People are just choosing to spend their time paying attention differently. It's diversified as opposed to diminished. And I think that with augmented reality, what you've suddenly got is this amazing, well-crafted, high attention, experience-led space where people are choosing to spend time with brands, but they're doing it totally on their own terms. You have to choose to open up the platform, to scan the world, to launch augmented reality, and to spend time with it, and then share it with your friends before you go and make a purchase. Really, the intent and the attention is all in the hands of the consumer at that point. And then I think that if you build on that again and look at emotion, which supposedly is also something that's very hard to build at the moment, well, TV ads are getting shorter and people have ad blockers on. Again, with augmented reality and with NFT, you have this opportunity to create an emotional connection through the craft and through the moment that the person is spending with the brand, before they go on to kind of go and take that action. So for me, kind of the way we think about authenticity is how brands can use this emerging technology. And actually, I don't think it's a fad. I think it's something that's just going to grow. As we've already said, we're spending more and more time with our digital lives being just our lives, right? Augmented reality, virtual reality, extended reality, it's just the new reality. And I think that people are going to be spending increasingly amounts of time and giving increasing amounts of attention and actually building bigger, more emotional connections with these experiences as they become richer and more developed. So I think for me, in that respect, authenticity is something that is going to grow alongside the values of attention and emotion as people become more familiar with this as an experience that just is a part of the new reality.
Yeah, that's yeah, well said. So we've been getting a bunch of questions in the chat, and I'd like to take a couple of them. I hope to wrap this up pretty quick, but it's a bunch of stuff around sustainability and environment, which I was surprised about. Maybe that's just because I'm not American, but it's it's definitely top of mind for a lot of people. There's one particular question that I thought was interesting, which is to say, we were going back and forth on, is it green energy? Is it okay? Could you use that green energy somewhere else? And then we kind of got down this rabbit hole of, why do we even need NFTs in the first place? Do all brands need them? Could they make them without doing it on the blockchain? Should we look at the breakdown like that? Should we look at it like, hey, there's a sustainable thing we've been doing for a while. There's this newer thing that uses a lot of energy, and everyone's jumping on that bandwagon. How do we fix that problem? Is it a marketing thing? Is it just switching? Do we just all get off of Ethereum? I don't know. There's some big questions there. Actually, maybe I'll say that to Rachel first. We all get off of Ethereum. Will, what do you
got? Well, I think there are a lot of misconceptions in this place, and it's, similar, like, is it just a JPEG? There's a lot of headlines going on, particularly when it comes to carbon emissions. So there's a ton of nuance. So let's start with Ethereum. Obviously, it's one of the chains that has the most adoption when it comes to NFTs, but there are other chains that Isabel put forth in her presentation around, proof of stake. And Ethereum in itself is actually migrating to proof of stake, and it's real and it's coming pretty soon. I won't go into sort of, the trade-offs or differences between proof of work and proof of stake, but long story short, proof of stake is less energy intensive because it combines virtual aspects of mining. Similarly, there are layer 2 solutions that are helping Ethereum communities go faster and minimizing some of these work as they migrate to proof of stake. So this is something that will be solved within the next year or 18 months. And if it's really important for your brand, then you can choose to adopt an NFT standard on a 3rd generation blockchain that already supports proof of stake. To address the question on miners minting fees in latent capacity, it is true. There is excess capacity right now in places like Iceland, or they use geothermal energy, and these miners are simply solving for a latent demand that exists there, and where renewables are actually underutilized and under discussed. So there's a ton of nuance, and it's all relative, as you said, right? Relative to what? Is it relative to specific emissions from a specific artist that might be traveling to Art Basel in a year, and now because everything is virtual and NFTs let them take advantage of digital ownership, they won't take that private jet to Art Basel anymore. So there's a trade-off between the physical and digital world, and even in the digital world, as you said, the trade-off is proof of ownership versus not. So it's a nuanced topic. It's headline grabby, but the crypto and blockchain community is definitely working on solving some of these proof of work versus proof of stake issues. And if you as a brand, you can choose to make a stake, no pun intended, in your marketing by choosing a specific blockchain and being really conscious about it.
That's great. Will, did you say you had something to say?
Yeah, so I was just going to jump in and say, I think there are other the elements to the environmental point as well. I mean, you know, what you're finding with product trial is kind of trial without travel, right? We can open a shop wherever we want to. We can put, you know, trainers on people's feet wherever they are. They don't have to actually travel into town or travel to a shop to go and make the purchase. So there are kind of small environmental impacts that increase with scale when you look at it in that respect. And I think that's possibly also kind of tied to manufacturing too, and lots of other areas of industry where augmented reality is being applied to remove the need for physical presence and physical state. So I think that there, as Rachel said, there are many nuances to it, but I do think that we're in a period of positive change, and that it does sit, the responsibility sits with all of us, right? Like to make kind of considered and thoughtful decisions about the way that we, you know, interact with the world with the work that we do.
And possibly just to add to that, I think also if you think about people flying around the world to look at art and buy art, and then compare that to being able to buy digital art, there's trade-offs in that as well. But I think you are sort of, with all of these environmental issues, why would it be worth doing this? And I think that it's also interesting thinking about NFTs as that contract. So beyond sort of digital art and digital fashion, actually, if you're using NFTs to represent a contract which might previously have had a lot of middleman in the middle, it's more verifiable, it's instant, it's sort of decentralized and permanent, and there are obviously huge benefits to that.
That's great. Well, we'll just do a little layup question for everyone as we wrap this thing up. So we'll go around. We'll start with Isabel, and then I'll go from there. But basically, can you give me like 1 or 2 lines about what's making you excited in this space and where it's headed? That's a loaded question, so that's tough to do in 1 or 2 lines, I realize. So Isabel, I'm putting you on the spot first.
No, all good. I guess it's so, I think maybe often art and design comes first in new like technologies, and I think that the next 5 years will be a sort of sweet shop of interesting thoughts around how you could actually apply NFT technology. And even just thinking about NFTs for the last 2 weeks has just made me, I was fairly new to this until sort of 2 or 3 weeks ago, and I've just been totally seeing the light on their potential.
Yeah. Demera?
Oh, I think that okay, let me reformulate this. The most exciting thing about digital art in general, and NFTs for me right now, is the concept of ethno-digitization, which is the idea of making sense of technology through your own cultural identity and livelihood and background. And I see it as a great tool of then being able to construct a more global aesthetic, virtual global culture that is more inclusive of different backgrounds. Because as of right now, specifically talking about fashion, we have the ethnical fashion or the oriental fashion, and then the mainstream standard Western fashion. But with digital fashion, I see a lot of inclusion of different cultures. And I hope and expect these different cultures to eventually impose themselves on the mainstream analog fashion industry as well.
All right. Rachel.
So I've been in the crypto industry a long time, and I definitely feel like NFTs and what we've seen in the last 2 months, you know, people say that crypto is going mainstream, and this is the mainstream moment, but I actually like to think of it as now mainstream is going crypto. It's the other way around, where you feel that push towards the industry. And you know, it's been many different use cases for the last 10 years. It's been primarily sort of trading and speculation, and you know, store of value, and NFTs are really just enabling the creator economy. Removing rent-seeking intermediaries, letting them have control over their demand, and how they get to monetize, and making their fans owners of their work and using a new technology. And so it's just turning users into fans and fans into users, and having a technology power that is really powerful, and really powerful to see it actually happening at scale, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, I agree with that. I like that the mainstream is going crypto. I'm stealing that. Let's go. We'll do Will and then we'll do Carrie. So Will, you're next.
Great, thanks very much. So I totally echo all of those. I'm very excited about everything that everyone's mentioned so far. And I think that I'll go back to something I said at the beginning, which is around craft, really quite simply. I just love the idea that a lot of what we're seeing now is kind of a focus on digital craft and the accessibility and ownership of that, not just being democratized, as well as the accessibility to being creative itself. I think that's all wonderful to see. And then just kind of bring it back from a marketing perspective, I think that is relevant for brands as well, in that they're able to create something that's just of a quality with which people choose to spend time with. And that idea of people being able to choose to spend time with a brand and ad as opposed to being interrupted with it, I think is unique and very incredibly interesting. I think that AR in itself is probably the most interesting format to come along since film for me personally. And I think we're really not necessarily at the beginning, but really starting to see a mass tipping point, as we've mentioned a couple of times. So I think all of that's very exciting.
That's a great segue to Carrie.
Cool. Well, we call it the NFT hype right now, non-fungible token hype. And NFT is an acronym, and I would love to just throw in another acronym that's been around for a long time too, that I think will be the next hype within blockchain. DAOs, DAO, decentralized autonomous organizations. I think that's what I'm the most excited about in the space. And I think within 8 to 10 months, that we're going to have a DAO hype coming up, when we're going to be super excited about DAOs as we are about NFTs. And that to me is the most exciting space, because it is really talking about the blockchain economies. It's really talking about community. It's really talking about the decentralization of multiple different aspects. And it's really asking for participation from people to start taking part rather than just be passive observers. Now you have to be an active participant. And that's what's going to be necessary moving forward, not only in blockchain, but in general society. So yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of interesting DAOs coming up in the next few months, especially this year.
Man, I could not have ended this talk better than that. That's great. If you're excited by this talk, go Google that, and you can learn more. You can crawl down the rabbit hole a little deeper. Thank you everyone so much for joining today and taking the time out of your day to join this panel and educate the masses and talk about this stuff with like-minded people. Thank you, Isabel, for putting together that presentation, and I had a great time. I hope everyone else did. If you need to reach out to me for any questions, my name is Brandon Askov. I'm Brandon at rocketinsights.com. That's probably the fastest way to reach me. And yeah, I'd love to talk about this more soon. I'm sure we'll hit another bubble soon. So we'll talk about it then. Bye, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.